Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Open Concept Podcast, where we are breaking down unnecessary walls and barriers that stand in the way of greatness. Our guest today, Angela Brown, joining us all the way from Salt Lake City, Utah. Angela is the executive publisher of SLUG magazine, Salt Lake Underground magazine. If you haven't heard of it, now you have. And also the founder of Craft Lake City, which I'm excited to get into. And congratulations, by the way. I understand that SLUG magazine just passed their 37th anniversary. Is that correct? 37 years in publishing now. Amazing. For a magazine to be around that long. I mean, that's pretty incredible. So it's got to have a lot going for it. But Angela, before we get on, please, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Thank you so much, Brandon. It's a pleasure to be here today on your podcast and tell your listeners a little bit more and viewers about who I am and about Salt Lake City and why I've chosen to make it the place that I just want to be all the time. And, part of that, I run two very localized businesses. SLUG magazine, as you mentioned, that acronym Salt Lake Underground, which we really encompass music, arts, events, and community. And I started reading that magazine when I was just a preteen and then grew up and started working at it as a young adult and then eventually took it over, and I've been at the helm of SLUG magazine now for 25 years.
Crazy.
So, which is crazy. And so I've grown up with the magazine and also with been able to shepherd it from the legacy publication that it has been, back when it was just more of a zine, a black and white kind of punk rock zine, into a legitimate, publication, community publication that's respected. And that also has a website. We've got a podcast and do a lot of events. I really started a large event arm too, which led into the nonprofit that I founded 18 years ago called Craft Lake City. And that is a 501c3 nonprofit. And our mission is to elevate Utah's creative culture through science, technology, and art. And how we do that is also through a lot of events, through a lot of education, and basically just shining a light on the creatives that are here along the Wasatch Front, which is the kind of the mountain range that is close to Salt Lake City that encompasses, all of the other major cities around us. And so as we it's just a really exciting time to be here in Salt Lake as the Olympics are going to be coming back in just 9 more years. And the world is kind of turning their attention back to Salt Lake.
Yeah, I think we're right after Brisbane, right? I think they're going to the Summer Olympics and then the Winter Olympics back in Salt Lake City.
Back in Salt Lake, so we just can't wait.
Yeah. Well, I think
Switzerland might be in between there too.
I think so.
The French Alps, the French Alps,
somewhere in there. I was talking to somebody else. He was down, he lives in Singapore, and was it Singapore? I think he's in Singapore now, and he is he's Australian, so very Australian, but lives down in Singapore. And he was saying he was going back to Brisbane for the Olympics back in 20. I guess that's going to be eight years from now, or whenever that was. Anyways, after Brisbane comes back. I can't do math all that well, but appreciate it. My question is Salt Lake City, right? So you've been there a long time. It is not super common for people to stay in the same area and build a business around like a very local area for the same period of time. So Salt Lake City has got to have some pretty amazing stuff happening for it. But did you always know that you were going to end up in Salt Lake City and build a business around that culture, that community? Or did you go out, explore the world, and then decide to come back? Or where did that journey take you?
Luckily, Salt Lake City has an incredible international airport that is also very close to the downtown within, a 15-minute Uber ride, which is so neat. So I do get out as much as I can, but I actually born and raised here, three generations here in Utah, and it's just really a great place to live. The people here are fantastic, but no, I did not always think that I was going to live here. In fact, for a long time, I really tried to get out, and I had actually an opportunity to get out of Salt Lake and move to a larger city. I always wanted to go to a New York or a San Francisco, someplace with just lots of art and lots of culture and fast-paced environment, because Salt Lake City 25 years ago, back when I took over SLUG magazine, and then of course 18 when I founded Craft Lake City, was a very different place. I mean, society was a very different place, right?
Mhm.
But Salt Lake was much more sleepy than it is now. And I like to think that my decision to stay here and help be part of making it more of a metropolitan place that is part of people's daily vocabulary, what people know about Salt Lake, is that I like to think that I've helped shape that and also break down some of those barriers, that we're not just a very, very conservative state. I mean, we still are a conservative state, but not conservative city. Salt Lake City is a little bit different, kind of like an Austin in
In
Texas.
Texas. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And so it started out as an independent magazine. It's still kind of an independent magazine. But there's been some underground bands that now really aren't that underground anymore. You've had some names like Black Flag that have been in there, Motorhead, Slayer, AFI. Like, these are some bands that have come up, have been in the magazine, and of course they're now on big stages outside of maybe the local mag. But this was a really good launch pad for a lot of creatives and a lot of bands, for sure. So I it's pretty wild what local, what might be considered to some as small local publications are and what they can do. But I think what you're doing is pretty incredible.
Thank you so much. Well, and as journalism has changed drastically, even over the past 5 years, and will continue to change, right? It's localized content is just becoming more and more important, because national content, especially with social media and all of the wonderful people out there, providing content in whatever form it is, you have access to what's happening around the world in seconds. But we don't necessarily have easy access to finding what's happening in people's communities, from a localized level, unless we really know who to follow, or unless we do a deep dive into social media. And so that's really where we come along with SLUG Magazine as a trusted voice, that reputation being around for 37 years, being able to maintain a business model that is constantly fluctuating and changing and adapting. And so we have a lot of loyal readers that are part of that, and of course, contributors and content. And we are out there all the time, just really covering what's happening here. And of course, all of the really awesome people that are coming to town. And that's how we've been able to do some of that coverage of some of those incredible big bands that you mentioned.
You mentioned trust, and I read a stat. It was the stat may be a little bit off here, but it was about 70% of Americans deeply trust local publications versus national news. And here in Canada, I mean, same thing. Like, if I see something that's globally announced, whether it's going to be on CNN, CBC, Fox, like, these are big networks, big outlets. For me personally, I hear something and I take that with a grain of salt, and I don't really trust that at all. And maybe that's just because there's been a lot of conversations politically about different agendas, maybe because you just realize pretty quickly that everything is wildly over exaggerated. Even there was this friend down in Puerto Vallarta, and if you have been following what's been going on there was some cartel that were down there, and they had killed the cops had killed one of the head of the cartel, and they were going around and doing some bombing and stuff like that. And the news made it sound like it was this monstrous, like, absolute disaster, but they were cutting up clips that people had sent in, and the people that were there were actually like, it's kind of scary for a minute. But it's really not that bad. I wish that the news wouldn't blow it up as much as it has been, because it's, it's deterring people from coming here. And in fact, there was, very, very few casualties, or zero casualties, I think. Again, somebody will probably correct me on that. But my point being is there's a tremendous amount of trust in these local publications and in private or smaller, whether it's going to be magazines or podcasts, but independent media is wildly on the rise. It has been for a while, but independent media holds so much power. Why do you think that is? Why do you think so many people are turning to independent media as their source of trust and their source of choice when it comes to getting their name out there and putting their badge of honor, their brand in something like your magazine?
Indie media, I mean, even just, you with your podcast, like, we're passionate, indie content makers. We're very passionate about what we cover, about what we're doing. And with big corporate media, it's the business, right? And the business model has changed so much, and it's constantly changing, and they're just trying to find a way to live like they did 15 years ago, when big media was big money, and it still is big money, but they have to do different things to get that big money, and things that kind of, I believe, kind of verge on unethical, to some sense. And it's all entertainment. What I personally have kind of seen with especially big news, right, is it's almost like a conglomeration of reality TV mixed with sensationalism. And so we, instead of having more emphasis on hard facts, it's really on hard entertainment. And I don't think that our news should be entertainment. I think it should be more factual based and about information, and leading it up to the viewer, the reader, the listener, to just kind of decipher their own opinions about the information that you're providing. And that's one of the reasons why the type of journalism that we do it is straight up entertainment, community entertainment. We're not hard news at all. And so that's why we cover music, arts, events, and a community. We might cover organizations or individuals that are political or that do that hard news coverage professionally, but we do not pretend to do that ourselves, because you really do need to be trained on that and trained on how to present that information ethically to the public. With that in mind, we're also part of the Society of Professional Journalists. We keep up on all those stats and make sure that we're ethically operating in the entertainment area, and that means. But I think it's such a careful. You have to be so careful in those industries where you're doing hard news.
Yeah, no, 100%. Let me ask you, have you work with a lot of creatives, and I don't know the back end, the ins and outs of SLUG magazine, the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of momentum that you guys need to get. Publications, I imagine, that got to get out pretty quickly. Like, editors got to be on top of stuff. Visual has to, graphics have to be in. There's publishing dates that need to be met. But working with creatives, a lot of people, I think, whether you own a creative shop, a marketing agency, there's generally this understanding that creatives don't like rules. They don't like to be in a box. They don't like to follow systems. They don't like to, follow deadlines. It's kind of like, you can't force creativity, right? You have to let it come. And like, how do you harness and take all of the creativity with all of these people and keep it on track to make sure that you're consistently delivering out what you need to and what you say you're going to for your customers, for your readers? How do you keep creatives on track, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, you're not wrong with that stereotype. A lot of creatives are that way. And even my own self, that's something that I'm working on in my business, is tightening up our processes and systems and being a better example as a leader in that way. And but we have a highly trained team that works really well with our creatives, and we make jokes all the time. It's like herding cats. And there's a couple of culprits where you just know, we have a specific columnist that's been writing for the magazine for a couple of decades, and they're beloved by the community. And they kind of know that, and they're always late on their article, like clockwork, right? And but there's some ways we can adjust for it, like giving them fake deadlines, right?
Mm,
Or maybe bribing them with an extra pair of concert tickets we know they might really want if they meet their deadline this month. So there's some kind of like creative and fun ways to interact with creatives, but it can be challenging sometimes. And sometimes, I mean, we've had things happen like this one night. The magazine was due the next day at the printer, because of course we're print and online being a legacy publication, and the cover artist didn't submit the artwork, and so I had to stay up all night designing it myself. But actually it turned out to be one of our most beloved covers. So there's happy accidents in those stories, but it does keep you on your toes.
yeah. Well, I call it a forcing function, right? Like, because it's something that you don't necessarily expect, or if you have this long deadline, or you're not planning on, or if you have a plan but you don't know what to do, how to start, it's like, okay, well, book that next thing that's going to force you to get your act together and just get it done, right? So if you're trying to run a race, and you know down the road you want to run a race, it's not first buy the pair of shoes, and then do all of the training, and then start eating healthy, and then eventually, once you're feeling pretty good, sign up for the race. It's like, no, sign up for the race first, and then that will force you then to do everything else leading up to that timeline, because you've put a date on it, you've put money on it, you've invested in yourself. You're now going to make sure that you're getting up, and you're getting the shoes, and you're getting the routine done, and you're doing the running, and you're eating the right things, because you've already signed up for that race. You have that forcing function that is going to ensure that you're going to be forced to get the results that you're looking for.
Well, and I think that's what being an entrepreneur is all about, is just continually enforcing that forcing function, because you just got to keep going. And I don't know about you, but when I took over my first business, or started my first business with Craft Lake City, you just start, you're like, okay, here we go. Who knows if it's going to work or not, right? And then you're just off to the races, and you're forced to keep going.
Yeah. When you started this magazine, I understand you were working a couple of jobs at that point. It wasn't just this straight. You went from no job straight into the magazine. You were working a couple of different positions, and this seemed like a side hustle for you in the early days. But what did that transition look like? What were you doing before SLUG, and how did you transition into that and start making? Real quick before we get back to the show, if you have heard anything on this podcast that has resonated with you, or if it's helped you in any way, appreciate more than anything in the world if you could go hit that subscribe button or leave us a review. It helps us tremendously. I want to go back to being able to continue to serve and do more and more, and help out and get bigger and bigger guests on, better and better. The only way that I can do that is with your help. I'm so honored to be here. Let's get back to the show. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. This, and decide that you were going to make this your full-time career.
I've always just had kind of a vigor for a lot of different areas of life. And so I think that has really led me down this path, is simultaneously just kind of pursue them all. So, for instance, I loved music, I loved art, I loved photography, I loved to write. And so I just knew that I was going to have a career that kind of encompassed one of those. And it just turns out that I was able to create a career that encompasses all of them. But so I was simultaneously pursuing careers in all of those areas to see what sort of panned out. So I was working for a record company, working music retail. This is like kind of like pre-Napster, right? Like pre-iTunes, pre-Spotify, when the record industry was very different. And then I was also working for a professional photographer, doing assisting there because I loved photojournalism and loved fine art photography. And then I was going to school as well, getting my college degree. And so I had kind of all these different areas that I was pursuing, and just kind of like, okay, which one is going to be the magic ticket? And hoping that I could get out of town, out of Salt Lake City with the record company, which after I graduated college, they were just waiting for me to get that certificate. And as soon as I got it, I got promoted. And they wanted to take me to San Francisco, which I was like, all right, if I can get to San Francisco, Then I can work for the record label. They can see what a talented photographer I am. I can become their staff photographer. Then I can get transferred to their office in New York City, which is where the capital of photography is. Every photographer wants to go work in New York City because it's where all the photographers are. It's where everything's happening in the industry, right? Fashion, like photojournalism, anything that you want to do is there. And that's actually was I was on track for. And I was kind of at that point when some things happened in my personal life that gave me the crossroads to decide between that dream or a new dream that I hadn't been planning that involved putting my family first and my community first. And that was the crossroads that I chose.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What was going on in your personal life? Do you mind me asking? You
No,
don't
no.
have to answer it. I'm just curious. You kind of led with this like big pivotal moment, and you had to make this decision. I want to kind of know what the defining factor was.
Yes, no, this big decision. Well, so essentially what happened, I got the call, I got the promotion, and my father was an entrepreneur, and he and I were very close. And so he and I went out to lunch, and I explained to him, hey, this promotion I've been getting, I finally got it. I'm going to move to San Francisco, told him everything. Um, it was going to be about a month from then. I needed to really work quickly and get all my things together, put my notice in at my jobs. And he normally would be so happy. He just really wasn't that happy. And I was like, what's going on? And so upon further conversation, he kind of just blurted out that he had a secret and he needed to tell me what it was. And I was like, all right, so what is this secret? And it was a secret that he had terminal cancer, and he had known about it for like 6 or 7 months, and he just didn't like knew it was terminal, had been going to the doctor by himself, had been trying to decide what to do. Should he start radiation? Should he start chemo? The prognosis wasn't good, but he didn't know how to tell my family. And I come from a large conservative family of 6 kids. I was the youngest, and most of my other siblings had kind of like moved away or started families or were kind of engaged in other things. They weren't quite as involved as in things going on with my parents, which were a little complicated because my mother, she was bipolar schizophrenic, and she, for a lot of her life, lived a pretty normal life. And then after me, the last child that was born was really when she kind of never recovered from the pregnancy. And I say recovered because a lot of women kind of go through, that phase after where they feel a little bit depressed, where they don't really feel themselves. And she never came out of that and actually kind of dived deeper into mental illness and had to be institutionalized and go through a lot of electroshock therapy and different medications. And this is also when mental illness was still relatively new. This was like the 80s. And so he was also, the irony there was he was the dean of the graduate school of social work. He had a doctorate in in psychology and was at the top of his field, had his own private practice. And then he had this partner, this love of his life that was severely ill. And so he was working a lot kind of growing up and paying off medical bills. My mom was institutionalized a lot. And so kind of knowing that he was going to pass and what was going to happen to her. She would go through these periods of high functionality, and then these low periods where she'd have medication would have to be redone. She'd have to go back into the hospital, and sometimes those periods would take years to get her back on track again. And then it was like, okay, how long is she going to last? Is in this high functioning role, will it be 6 months or 6 weeks or 6 years? And she happened to be in a high functioning period when he told me that, but of course we knew that at some point, she would kind of slip again. And so I just looked at him and I was like, all right, I'm not going to take the promotion. I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to support you and transition you and take care of mom. And so that's what I did.
Did you feel pretty good about that at the time?
It's kind of one of those things where sometimes you just get the call to step up and you step up, and it
I
doesn't
love that.
matter, you know?
Yeah.
And I think I was a little sad, because I really did want to go pursue that other dream, But honestly, I would do it all over again. It was the right decision. And it led me to take over SLUG. I mean, it
Yeah.
was really because at that point, I also had when I received the call to take the promotion of the dream job that I really wanted. I told my boss at SLUG because I was actually working for him and he was the second publisher and he had pitched me. He was like, "Don't quit, take it over." And I was like, "No, I don't really think I want to." He was like, "Think about it over the weekend." And then that was when I met with my father and he told me his diagnosis. And so I went back to work on Monday and I was like, "All right, I'm taking it over. I'm going to go apply for some loans and let's do this." So it was like, okay, I'm making this commitment to my family, but I'm also making this commitment to my community and to Salt
Mm.
Lake City. And if I'm going to stay here, I'm going to make Salt Lake City the place that I want to live. And if I want to live in these other cities, I'm going to go travel. I'm still going to go outside and get inspired and bring back those ideas here and make this community the community that I want to be in.
Amazing. I,
Mhm.
it sounds like this fact in your life, it was
Mhm.
a sort of weighted and kind of moved you in a direction that you maybe weren't considering. Maybe it was on your heart, but there was some, a bigger factor at play here for sure. And I think a lot of people would recognize the weight of having to, to take care of family and being able to step up and take care of your family. First of all, I need to commend you because that's a huge decision to put your family first. In hindsight, it sounds like it was an incredible choice. It landed you somewhere that maybe you didn't expect to be, and it's an even better place probably than that opportunity would have brought you. But I, since we're on the topic, if somebody is faced with this decision, do they stay or do they go? And they're faced with two opportunities, one that seems great, the other one that seems also great, one that maybe involves some travel, one that maybe doesn't. But people come to these forks in the road, these big decisions, and quite often they either don't make a decision or they make a decision and they will always question whether or not they made the right decision. I think it's probably more rare that people make a decision wholeheartedly and never actually um, have any sort of resentment or regret about what that might have looked like. But with somebody that's at this fork in the road and looking to make a decision, if you were to tell them anything and on how and guide them as to how they can maybe make a decision like this, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to follow their heart and but really get clear with their heart, right? Because sometimes, I mean, get clear with your heart, but follow the act of service. Follow what's going to serve others the most, because in turn, when you serve others, you're serving yourself. And not to say that you shouldn't take care of yourself or put yourself first in certain circumstances, because absolutely you should. But it served me, and my goodness, I know that I did have a sibling that chose to deal with the news by leaving the country for 2 years. And they came back for Dad's funeral because he did stick around for two years, which was wonderful to be able to spend that time helping him transition. And of course, he declined, and that was its own journey of taking care of your parent when they're declining is so difficult.
Yeah.
But there's something so beautiful about that too. They take care of us, they bring us into this world. I think it's the least that we could do is to help show them the same respect if we have the opportunity. So if you're ever in the opportunity, it's so difficult. So difficult, especially at a young age. I mean, I was 25.
Yeah.
And so when all of my friends were doing other things, I mean, not to say that I didn't still take time to hang out with friends and things like that. But after, oh, maybe I'm going to go to a 3 a.m. doctor's appointment and hold my mom's hand while she's going through electroshock therapy, things like that. It's so rewarding on the end to know that I was able to be there for them when they needed it most. And that feels really good.
Are you generally a pretty grateful person?
Yes. Well, I try to be
Well,
working on it every day.
I get that because even before we started recording the podcast, we were chatting and I was asking, hey, how's your day going? And you're like, it's only Wednesday, but all of these great things have been happening, and this was going on, and we met partnered with these great people, and it just really feels like gratitude is a huge part of where you choose to go to and where just naturally, I think you end up going. But I had to know, is that something that you always did, or is this something in hindsight, looking back now, that you've sort of trained yourself to do?
Thank you. It's a little bit of both. I think that, I mean, talking about my parents again, they were great people and they were always teaching us to be grateful for things, to show our gratitude. But also, it's something that I've really been working on as a practice. In fact, I have my team work on it. We do our team sync meeting every Monday, and that's something that is part of what we do. Is we have to write three things that we're grateful for, and then share one of them as a team as we go around the room. And I think that a lot of times it's it's a mindset practice too, right? Kind of getting in the right mindset because we sometimes don't slow down enough to think about some small things and how wonderful they are. And when we're thinking about what we do have, we are able to attract more of what we need and what we want, and it gets us out of that lack, right? Which we don't
Yeah.
really want to be thinking about what we don't have. Which I think is, as humans, a lot of times we just default to that. And I don't know if that's society or just how we're kind of predominantly conditioned, but our animal brain, right? Going
Yeah.
back to like, I don't have this. So I also work on it, practice
Yeah.
it every day.
Yeah. What do you do to practice on it?
Yeah, I mean, writing out lists like that, talking about it, um, even affirmations.
Yeah. I've my daughter, my oldest daughter, she's 4.5 now, and about 6 months ago, when she could start comprehending the conversations that I was having with her every day, when she wakes up and before she goes to bed, I ask her what are three things that she's happy for, and she's gotten into this habit now of telling me if I forget, she asks me, and we're lying in bed and we're about to go to sleep and we're lying down, and she'll ask me and she'll poke me. She's like, Dad, three things you're happy for. And she stimulates me to be like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay, let's talk about this. But that's a practice that I've really instilled in my oldest daughter, and I think it's a beautiful thing. I love it.
Thank you for mentioning that because I have a 4-year-old daughter too.
Oh no way.
And I actually haven't really talked to her about gratitude yet, but she is old enough, absolutely.
Yeah, I use the word happy versus gratitude, right? What are three things that
Yeah.
you're happy for today, rather than gratitude? Because I just thought happy was an easy word. She knows that.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
definitely.
but what are three things that you're happy for? And it always amazes me the things that she comes up with, and a lot of times it's just like her friend from school, but maybe it's something that she learned. Maybe it was her teacher. Maybe it was mom. More often than not, it's mom that she's happy for. But
Well, a shared happiness, of course.
yes, yes, a shared happiness. Um, I want to
Because
talk about Craft Lake City as well. So we
yeah,
haven't
yeah.
touched up on the nonprofit all that much, but Craft Lake City, give us the high points of what that looks like. How did it come to be? You've been on it now for 18 years. It's quite a commitment. 18 years is a huge commitment to anything. So it has to be pretty powerful. It has to be pretty meaningful to you. But where did this start? Where did this idea come from, and what does it look like now?
I know it's so wild. It's so wild to think about all of the years. When you're younger, everybody's like, it goes by so fast. You're like, no, it doesn't. And then you have
Yeah.
these conversations all of a sudden. You're like, wow, 18 years ago, I founded this organization and I'm still doing it
But I
and
think,
loving it.
and I think the sorry to cut you off, but I think if you are
No.
going to do anything really well, and that's what people underestimate, is if they're going to choose to do something, that choice to say, hey, I'm going to give this a decade, right? If you're going to take a big swing at something and have any sort of impact, a year spent on it isn't going to do that much. You're basically just going to get the wheels maybe a little greased, but you're not going to move it that far down the road. And you're not going to be able to put that much time, that much heart, that much resource into it. If that's going to be like, hey, we're going to do this for a year, it's like, it's no, we got to do this for a decade. That you got to start out with that plan if it's going to be something that you really want to get into.
It's true. Yeah, you got to make that commitment and just stick with it and grind, but innovate, get better, right?
Yeah, always. And things change. But 18 years, what did this look like? What was going on in your mind 18 years ago when you decided we need to do this? What was going through your heart?
So when I took over Slug magazine, I'd mentioned that it was really just kind of like more of like a punk zine, punk rag. And so one of the things that I did was just legitimized it by putting a lot of time, energy, sweat equity into it, like you're talking about, to building it up, changing the business model, and then the coverage model, changing really our identity and over, a slow period of time. And part of that business model change was injecting a revenue stream of events. And events have kind of changed a little bit since post COVID, which has also been fun to navigate that. But for quite a while, events was actually like a big income for Slug. It really subsidized advertising because I didn't really know how to sell advertising in the beginning. And it was also kind of hard to sell what we were doing at that point. And then, of course, transitioning to digital and navigating the digital advertising. So it's just really evident that we needed some other ways to make money. And Craft Lake City was actually one of our Slug magazine events that we started. And at that time, as a practicing artist, as someone who, came up in the photo scene, photography scene, had exhibited my work in galleries, but also done a lot of photojournalism, I didn't, there weren't places in Salt Lake City where there were limited places in Salt Lake City where you could have your work shown, seen, connect with other creatives, but also sell it. And especially to sell it outside of like a gallery setting that would be like an opening. And so that's what I created with Craft Lake City, was an event for creatives so they could come together as entrepreneurs and sell their work, but also where they could meet each other and recognize, have the community recognize them. Because a lot of the creatives at that time, this is 2009, they were thinking that they had to move, like myself, right? Back in the day, they had to move to another city in order to exist, that there just wasn't that economy here. And so I thought, well, let's create it.
So how do you create an economy that's worth sticking around for?
Community.
Give us a master class in developing a community that's worth not going to San Francisco or New York for.
Well, the first is really injecting that self-esteem into the creatives themselves and making them realize like just how incredible that they are and what they've got is unique, and then getting them together where they can reinforce each other self-esteem in that way. But the biggest, as we know, being business owners, the biggest proof of concept is cash, right? So
Yeah.
whenever you get paid to do something, it just reinforces that whatever you're doing, somebody else wants to pay for it, and that's a good thing. So you should do more of that. And so with our event, I through my record industry background, I was really good at hosting events, listing parties for bands, promoting concerts, all of that stuff. And then, of course, promoting the magazine, all that stuff just really transferred very easily to producing an arts festival. And so the Craft Lake City Arts Festival, that's really what it was. But it wasn't just for traditional art, because we actually had an arts festival like that here where they brought in artisans and traveling artists from out of town to show fine art. This was for the everyday person. So this is having art available to the public for a nominal charge, where anyone with $1,500 or $5 could leave with a beautiful piece of artwork, because I believe art should be accessible to everyone, and everyone should be able to have something handmade and original on their wall if they want. And so it was about providing an equitable art to the people, but it was also about supporting community. So you had to be a Utah-based artist in order to be part of our festival. You couldn't come from California. You could come and attend, but you couldn't come and exhibit your work. And it was really, that was the key component that made us very, very unique. Because, just like when you travel, I'm sure you're the same way. You don't want to go eat at like an Applebee's or a chain restaurant. You want to go to some beautifully handcrafted dinner that's really unique, or have some experience at a local boutique, something that's unique to that area that you are. And I wanted to provide that in an artful sense.
I love that. Yeah, because there is a lot of ways that you could dilute what it is that you're doing and probably drive more revenue, but you're not protecting the brand as much and the brand promise that you're making to the people that are involved. Is that a big part of your decision?
Oh, yes. In fact, over the years, we have so many out of state individuals that contact us that want to come in, and they're used to paying higher priced vendor fees and, packing that into their travel budget. But that's not who we are. And so
Mm.
we're happy to recommend them to, the Utah Arts Festival that does do that, and kind of stay true to our mission. But if they want to come attend, we'd certainly love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said, because I think that there's some real values there that you just hard lay down, and just you've defined them clearly. In your case, it's just a state line, right? But you've said if you're outside of the state line, then we have all these spots for you, but you're just not going to be a part of this specific thing. But it really protects everything, and it puts a lot of value, I think, on anybody that comes to support that, because they know that they're a part of something that is protected by somebody like yourself and an organization like SLUG Magazine and Craft Lake City.
Thank you. And it's just another thing to make us unique,
Yeah, yeah. I got to ask about AI. All right, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of talk in the creative space, right? I have a lot of creatives friends that are trying to figure out, do they like AI? Is it going to be helpful for them? How to utilize it? Is it going to absolutely start to rip the soul out of what it is that they're all about? And we talk a lot about AI on this podcast, but I gotta know, talking to so many people, so many artists, from a business standpoint, from a publishing standpoint, how do you look at integrating AI into a magazine like that? Or, if you're somebody that's building websites or writing a blog post or writing music, and how do you stay in that zone of keeping things really personal, but also starting to utilize AI? And what is the community that you're dealing with, and the conversations that you're having with artists around the use of AI? Where do most people land with that?
I love this question so much in this topic. It's so near and dear to my heart, honestly, because I am so pro AI in an
Awesome.
industry and a world, creative world that is very scared and fearful and anti AI. And I think that's another reason why I am here, is to help them with the transition, because there's just I saw in my own career, technology disrupt every industry that I wanted to go into. I started traditionally as a silver gelatin print photographer, right, who develops film and prints in the darkroom. And remember when film cameras came in. At one point I was going to go to Brooks University and attend like a really incredible photography program in Santa Barbara, and that got wiped out in like 6 months from when I was going to apply, because just overnight, right, when digital photography came on the market.
Mhm.
I saw it in the music industry too, which thank goodness actually I didn't get that promotion, because just a year after I would have accepted that position in San Francisco, the music industry flipped on its head, and the big corporation that I would have worked for, they actually closed down their San Francisco office 2 years later,
Mhm.
laid off people a year after I would have been promoted, and who knows, I could have been as one of the newer hires laid off, and so it's just I think you've got to adapt to technology and embrace it. Also Photoshop. I remember when all the photographers were freaking out about Photoshop, right? Like, and we just have to learn how to use these tools and how to adapt them and still do what we do. But why can't we do it faster or do it smarter? And it's still human led. It still comes from us, from our vision, for our brain. We can just be more creative about how we get there. And I think people forget that using AI takes a lot of creativity, and I can't wait to see how it continues to evolve, and how I can continue to be part of that conversation of helping creatives get over it, and also letting them realize that they're already using it. They just don't even know. They
Mhm.
don't even realize they're already using it every day.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting balance for a lot of musicians, a lot of writers, how to stop themselves from just writing what it is that they want to write, or developing the music that they want to develop, and stop from throwing it into an LLM or another program and saying like, hey, can you refine this a little bit, just out of curiosity? I'm not saying that I'm going to use it, I just want to see what you come up with, and then be like, okay, actually that's pretty good, like those sounds that you're coming up with are pretty unique. works really well. Maybe I will start to integrate some of that. But I think it is especially in the creative space, there's a big moral and um, I don't know if moral's the word I'm looking for, but there is like a defining point there. And I think people are in your space are really on the fence. And I'm really glad to hear you say that you're very pro AI.
Oh yeah, well, and you know, I'm in these old school industries. I still run a print publication, right? That you can pick up and read like a book, and I make 12 of them a year, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just as well as we do the digital, right? And so we want to make our content in any way people want to consume it. But and then of course I run this arts organization that focuses on handmade crafts, right? On blurring the line between fine art and craft, and it's really about creativity and making art. And so I'm definitely embedded in the analog human element of creation. And but how can we take that and use technology to inspire us to make more of that? For instance, just today, I was in an editorial meeting, and our senior designer was really proud of him. He One of his pitches, he took just his idea for what he wanted to pitch for a cover concept, threw it into Manus, and gave me a visual of his idea. Now, are we going to put that on the cover? Hell no. He's going to design it himself, right?
Yeah.
But automatically, visually, I was able to see the idea, get excited about it, and improve it. Versus if he'd written it out, writing's not his forte. Even if he kind of like explained it, would have taken a 10-minute conversation. You know, here we go. We can just kind of move forward. And again, he's going to design it using Photoshop, which is a tool that honestly is still not that old, right? I remember taking graphic design classes where you had to like, cut out the amber lith.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and even when I started at SLUG, we would print out these black and white versions, take them to an old school printer that would reshoot it and turn it into film, and they'd put the film on the press. And
Yeah.
that was pretty cool, but it took a lot of time. Now we have digital presses, right? And digital printers. Like, thank goodness. And the technology is so much cheaper. I couldn't afford to do a 4-color publication when I took it over. Now it's no big deal, right? Like, these innovations and improvements in technology in our industries, they're hard to stomach at first, but once you understand how it can make your life easier while not compromising your integrity, right? And I think that's what it is just remembering our integrity. And like the example you said with the song, throw it in there, see what it is, and then take it back and recreate that in your own way, because that's definitely not going to sound like AI.
This episode is sponsored by New Vision Projects, and everybody has heard the horror stories that happen. They have a friend of a friend or a neighbor that's been renovating for years on end, or they've been building a home and it just hasn't gone the way that it needed to go. Budgets are blown through the roof, timelines, forget about them. New Vision Projects has an incredibly strong track record for over 15 years of working with customers, serving them at the highest level. If you are considering building or renovating, check them out on Instagram at New Vision Projects or at newvisionprojects.com. Building the homes you want with the confidence you need. New Vision has you covered. Let them show you why they're different. Back to the show.
Yeah, and I think if it goes back a lot to intention, right? So where is your real intention with this? Is your intention to build the best song possible? Is it to get it distributed into, in front of as many people as possible? Is it to make as much money? Is it to, just really be heard and get something, really off of your heart? But I think if you go back to just generally understanding your intention behind how you decide to pursue something, that's gonna come out in the result.
Oh, yes. And again, like, people don't even realize that AI's already been happening to things that they love and care about already. Like, guaranteed, so many pop songs people love and adore have AI components, whether it's on the production side or on the auto tuning side of someone's voice, or correcting or like looping a beat, And, but guess who decided to make those decisions? A human did, right? So it's human-led design, human-led creation, but just using different tools that can help get us there quicker.
Well, you mentioned Napster, right? If like let's throw it back to Napster, because I remember sitting at my family computer. We eventually had one computer in the household, and there was this program, and it was just, we could download music for free. All of a sudden, it was wild. And some of the versions were shitty versions, and some of them were probably bound to throw viruses into your computer. And so you had to figure out the the antivirus and the firewalls and whatever to make sure that you didn't infect your family computer. But Napster really was a turning point for a lot of people, where a lot of musicians, the whole industry was up in arms, because all of a sudden these songs that they had worked so hard for could now be streamed, and it would strip revenue away from those artists. And so there was a huge fight. I remember Metallica, Lars, I think, was a huge, that came out, and it was just like, he was a big in fighting Napster and taking them down. But what that did was it showed people that there was a demand for consuming music a different way, consuming music digitally versus going out and going to a store, buying an album, buying a CD. And there were, like, over that time, there was a huge amount of people that still decided, we're not going to do this. We want CDs. This is the thing that is going to make us money. This is the future. But then the iPod came out, and the iPod was now a way. I remember it was like 200 songs in your pocket. You could listen to them at any time, but you still had to download them, and it still had memory issues. And then it evolved, but it proved a concept that consuming music in this way was something that people really wanted to do. And then it changed even further from there. From now we have iTunes and Spotify, where we can just pay a subscription and we can listen to literally anything we want to, podcasts, music. And what that did was it opened up, in my opinion, a lot of avenues and opportunity for people that would otherwise never get heard. They would never otherwise have a platform to get heard and get found in the way that is now widely available to them and to anybody.
It's amazing. I mean, working music retail, right? Like, we'd have to special order stuff in for people if they wanted to even just hear it, right? Like, now you can go on the YouTube, Spotify, all these platforms, and just with a couple clicks figure it out. You can, it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing. But you can also still have that experience where you can walk into a record store and buy a record. You can even buy CDs still. And so I think that's the thing too to think about, is there's always going to be these kind of purists, and there's always going to be an underground. There's always going to be a subculture that is going to relish in kind of the old school, the older style. And that's beautiful too. So there's room for everyone too. If for some reason you just morally can't, your Lars from Metallica, you just can't get behind, which I think he actually eventually did, right?
Yeah, of course he did. I know. Well, it's funny because I went into the Apple store. A little side note: I went into the Apple store and I tried on their Apple Vision Pro, which are their like virtual reality goggles you put on, and I was sitting there because I was waiting for my phone to get repaired, so I did a little tutorial on that. And one of the things that I was able to watch was they were like, check into this concert, and Metallica had this little app there. And so immediately I jumped into that and I checked out the Metallica concert. And next thing you know, I'm in the middle of this, like, I'm front stage at Metallica concert. I can see that, like, the sweat coming down the face of the band members, and you're right in there and you're looking around in this wild stadium, and the music just sounds crisp and the lights are awesome, and it's like being in the middle of this concert that you like. And I've been to Metallica concerts, and this was wild. I've never been this close to the stage before. It was powerful. But
I gotta go do that.
There I am. I'm like turning around, and like I'm just sitting, and there's all these people, getting ready to buy their iPhones and stuff. And I'm sitting in the middle of a mall. But a second ago, I was at a Metallica concert. I was legitimately at a Metallica concert. That was wild.
I mean, that is so beautiful. That's so amazing. I'm gonna make that appointment too. My Apple guy, he's emailed me about it. I just haven't set one up.
and at the same time, I still have all the records that the vinyl records I started collecting when I was 13. I still have, almost every single one of them, and they're
right. You can do both.
You can do both. Yeah. No, I love that. And what is next for Craft Lake City? Actually, before we get into that, the magazine world in general, right? You've been in it. You mentioned you do 12 a year. This is one publication a month. With digital, with AI, having print magazines, you said it yourself, is something that is kind of archaic, right? It's kind of wild. It is a dying industry. But what makes Slug Magazine stand strong? And do you see this? Do you see it getting stronger? Do you see it eventually moving 100% digital? Do you think that it's always going to make sense? Do you think it's always going to have a cult following? What do you think about magazines for the future?
Well, I think magazines for the future are different than Slug, but I think Slug is an anomaly and it will
Yeah.
continue to be an anomaly. We are just I mean, our sales are getting bigger and bigger every month. Obviously, we're working on that. We're doing some new processes and systems and things that are helping with that, but the potential, honestly, is infinite. And the reason why I say that with this print magazine is because we're a brand. We're not just a free publication that you can
Yeah.
find at any place cool. We're that, of course, and we will continue to be that. And I think that people will continue to gravitate more towards tactile things as they also continue to gravitate towards digital things. Just like you can enjoy that Metallica concert on the Apple headset and go home and be like, I just want to like look at this cool album cover and put on a record while I'm making dinner, because it's fun to like hear the pops and then also to go over and change it every 30 minutes. And so I think there's kind of a beauty in enjoying both, but sometimes we just want to get off of our digital and we want
Mm.
to kind of be more in the present, in the real world, and out of our heads and more in just the tactile. And I don't think we will ever lose that as humans. And I think certain people are definitely going to gravitate more towards that. And then also sometimes your phone battery dies, right? And so you are forced to look at other things. So I think that there's that for us, we're always going to be able to adapt and into those spaces, but there's actually infinite ways for us to continue to grow our brand.
I love that. You're going to see a huge amount of businesses that are experience-based businesses that are going to pop up and are going to absolutely kill it over the next while, because there is going to be a huge longing to reconnect as people, and whether that's going to be something like yoga retreats or whether it's going to be, walk and talks down by the ocean, whether that's going to be, you name it, different business summits that have little nuances. Like, we are going to see that all over the place, and those businesses are going to be huge, and people are going to start paying a lot of money for it because they're going to be making more money, probably doing what they're doing digitally and outsourcing to AI, but they're going to want to spend more money to connect with people in ways that, they otherwise wouldn't be able to. And so I think we're going to start seeing a lot of that more and more, for sure.
I think so. And again, like we can have both. We don't have to choose.
We can definitely have both. Yeah, I love that. Well, what's next for Craft Lake City? What's the next events look like? What's big? What's going on?
Well, we were just meeting with a potential donor today, a potential foundation, and it was funny. He was like, we have this stat of we impacted 883,000 people last year, and he was like, like with the amount of people that you have working for you, with how large your team is, and you guys are so active. I can't believe that you do that. And it was so fun to have him give us that compliment, because it really is astounding. I mean, we've got a lean team of 8 full-timers and we started as a 100% volunteer organization. So when I separated Craft Lake City from Slug for the first 7 years, I bootstrapped it. Everyone was volunteer, including me.
Wow.
Crazy, I know. And then finally figured out the business model for it, and we were able to slowly start stacking up team members. And here we are 18 years later. And we have a youth entrepreneur program where we teach individuals, 18 and younger kids, how to incorporate the business side into art making, and where they can actually come down to our big 3-day DIY festival and sell for 4 hours in a little area that we call Kid Row, which is like a little pop-up kids market. Of course, we're planning for a big DIY festival that's part of, that happens in August. That's 20,000 people over 3 days, over 350 local artisans. It's got a G-Fiber STEM building. It's got a kids area. It's got a big, like a robot invasion area where we have kids making robots and battling. Like, it's it's just so fun, and all of that's local, right? But we have a conference called Letter West where we've partnered with the neighboring city of Midvale to produce a creative conference for them, and that's where we actually bring in presenters in the hand lettering scene. So again, getting back to analog, people that draw out letters. So think of hand painting, think of mural making, think of even tattooing, graffiti. So we bring in leaders and pioneers in industry in those different areas to come and do a 2-day conference where they give workshops and they give keynote speeches. And so that's coming up in April. And then we have a little cash and carry market that we do called the Makers Mart that's coming up. So we have no shortage of events, and then we're working on a secret gallery project right now.
Whoa, secret. I imagine you can't talk about it until it becomes not a secret anymore. All right. Well, we'll keep in touch, and you'll let me know, and hopefully drop the dates, because I'm gonna hit you up when I come to Salt Lake City. I don't know when that'll be, but I'll make sure that we make a plan of it. I gotta come check some of this stuff out.
Come check it out. I mean, Salt Lake City is amazing.
I expect a full tour of the magazine shop and get the behind the scenes of what's going on.
Can't wait.
Angela, where can people find you if they want to connect?
You can find me at The Real Angela, which is my Instagram. Of course, you'll connect to all of my businesses there, Craft Lake City and Slug Mag. But for your followers today, listeners and viewers, of course, I'd like to give a special offer, Brandon.
Amazing. Let's hear it.
Well, I've been reading a lot of leadership books over the past year. I think you have too, probably.
But I've read every day. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you reading right now?
Who Not How is the book that I'm currently reading right now. That's what I was reading this morning. It's a great book. Who Not How.
Tell me more. What's it about?
It is about really defining the who's that you need in your life to help drive your cause and your goals forward, because sometimes we get very caught up in figuring out how we're going to do that, and how is very complicated and very taxing on the brain. And chances are, if you're looking at how you're going to do something and trying to figure out a huge task or a huge goal, it's probably never going to get done, because you're going to have so much other stuff going on in your world that you're never going to take the time to properly figure out how to do it. And chances are that's probably not where you should be spending your energy anyways. But the power of bringing great people into your world and defining the who's that you need in your world to continue to move things forward and build that together. It's very much about collaboration and community. Yeah.
That sounds like my jam. I'm going to have to put it on my list.
It's a great book. Check it out.
I'll put it on my list.
For sure.
Well, speaking of lists, so I've made a list of all of the books, my favorite books that I've read over the past 2 years, and just a little synopsis about them so people can kind of get a preview of whether or not it's a book for them. And so if you would like access to that list, to my recommendations of books, leadership books, business books, books that to help you grow personally, mindset books, I'm happy to share those to you. Just DM me with Brandon is the keyword. How about that?
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, people remember that. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes for sure. And 100%, I really appreciate you being here, Angela. It has been amazing. Any final words you'd like to leave to our listeners today?
I'm just so grateful to be here, Brandon. Thank you for this opportunity. It was so fun to talk with you more. And we'll see you soon.
Likewise. And to all our listeners that are out there and still with us, as always, I'm here rooting for you to win. Until next time, stay blessed. Have a great day. Rock and roll. Peace. See ya.